of A-APRP, Pan-African Society, and London for Sudan, we thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. Round of applause for yourselves once again. Thank you. We are gathered by our shared purpose to understand the struggle of our siblings in Sudan and to determine how we can act collectively, not just to end the genocide, but to achieve liberation for Sudan and for all African people on the continent and across the globe. We must be clear on one fundamental truth. When we say African people, we're not speaking merely of geography. Irrespective of where you were born, in Africa, North America, the Caribbean, or Europe, we all belong to the African nation, and this African nation belongs to us. Therefore, the struggle in Sudan is our struggle. It must be an urgent concern for every one of us. Because we recognize a fundamental principle that we are stronger together. We believe in Pan-African solutions for African problems. We hope that we leave here knowing how we can support Sudan and our responsibility to Africa and humanity, moving from just being outraged to taking action to uplift each other. Today, you will hear from brilliant speakers from across the diaspora who bring a wealth of knowledge on Sudan and our collective struggle. We'll also welcome our talented artists who will channel our spirit and resilience through cultural performances. Our journey begins now, so please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Sisters.
Sick of begging, sick of crying, sick of shouting to be heard, sick of begging, sick of crying, sick of shouting to be heard. Will you listen to our pain? Will you listen to our pain? Will you hear us as we say, Sudan will be free again. Sudan will be free again. 'Cause we never wanted this war. We never wanted you before. We didn't want all this fighting. Now you taking up arms and you raping us to show civilian lives are dying. But both sides are never free when you break humanity. That's why we are rising. How many times do we have to say, children are dying in every way? Are the satellites enough to say, we got a war and it's rampaged? Will you hear us? Will you say our names? 'Cause we are sick of begging for wealth, sick of crying for wealth, sick and tired of saying, please will you hear our voices? As if we've been silent every day. Will you listen to our pain? Will you listen to our pain? Will you hear us as we say, Sudan will be free again, Sudan will be free again. I know right now on the news, you're probably seeing lots of violence and hearing about disgusting things happening, but that is not the essence of the Sudanese people. The essence of the Sudanese people are kind people who share their food, their homes, their energy with everybody that they meet. And anyone who's visited Sudan will tell you that they're some of the kindest people they've ever met in the world. And in April 2019, they staged the sit-in and they refused to leave until Bashir left, the name of the dictator at the time. He did eventually leave, but they put someone else in his place, and they refused to leave again. They said, you're cutting the head off of the snake. This is the same regime, same people. We're not leaving. That person lasted one day. And then they brought in Burhan, who is currently the head of the Sudanese armed forces. And just to explain, the sit-in area, it was huge. I never know how to compare the scale of it, but it was so huge to the point that you had people playing football matches, you had stages with people performing, people flying in from the diaspora to perform as well. You had an art, people were singing, people were making songs, people were performing, and I just feel like the life came back to the Sudanese people. And unfortunately, in June 2019, the sit-in showed too much of a threat to the powers that be, and there was a massacre, what we refer to as the June 3rd massacre. And basically the army and the RSF and security forces all banded together and they stormed the sit-in at night and killed people and did unspeakable things. And then they basically besieged the city to keep people in their homes, to keep that fear alive, to stop people from coming out again. And I was there at that time. This piece is a piece I wrote just to process all of that. Bang. And the birds fly. Bang. Ricochets through the sky. Bang. Rasas meets my eyes. Mother and father ducking with a shattering cry. Children running from the barrel because of their civilian lies. Echoing screams as Al-Qaeda dies. Another dream I'm living as I open my eyes. Weeping from the bosom. Another Cushite dies. Try to erase our memory, yet glorify our tribes. Blow the tops of our tombs and take the gold inside. Tears of the martyr. Bodies rising up, mothers searching for their daughters. People acquiesce, don't understand their slaughter. Hands in my pocket. I find pieces of that night. Can't let it go. Need something tangible inside. Step off the plane, and blue meets my eyes. A haze of Sudan and the martyr's cries. You only really cared when you thought I died. But now I'm back, you can't even sympathize. Should have stayed and let the silence of death reside. Seems to be the only way to make you come alive. More than a hashtag, more than a meme. Their bodies are rising and I still hear their screams. You looked me in the eyes, knowing exactly what you were going to do that same night. Oh, how many more bullets have to fall? Oh, the blood is on your hands, do you need any more? The bullets in my heart were passed down from your hands to theirs to mine. And you took a piece of my soul with every cry. I could not just stand still and close my eyes. Some days I prepared myself to die. Some have already made that sacrifice. Blood of the martyr, dreams of the father, dreams of the mother, ricochets of disaster. I never knew the beauty of my country until now. It's more than you can see. It's something to be felt. I cannot just stand aside when for generations you have committed mass genocide and all of these countries just stand aside, greedy hands watching the world divide. More than just a percentage, minerals for you to gather. In the rock, in the earth, holds the souls of my ancestors. You shoot off our nose, you blow up our tombs, you've taken our history so nobody knows. Out in the streets, painting these walls, we're fighting for peace and they're taking it all. I'm angry. Yes. Yeah. You want to talk about Nubian kings and queens, but you don't even know where Nubia is, and you won't even listen when Nubia screams. Hey, how many more bullets have to fall? Whoa, we're fighting for peace and it's justice we seek, but they're blind when we see, so there's nothing at all. Why can't you hear me? Your silence stifles their screams. But this is America, this is Britannia, this is Sudan, the land of our fathers. Call me Kandaka, call me survivor. Bodies shot in the back because they knew we were stronger. Bodies shot in the ground only made us fight harder. We won't be silenced, you'll have to make us all martyrs. Thank you so much.
Become an ancient empire was they already had quite significant relations with each other. And then they started to have immigration from other parts of North Africa into Sudan, and people from various areas started to assimilate. This is also something very important to highlight. African people have been immigrating into each other's regions for millennia. We are not alien to each other. Xenophobia and divisionism in our countries is quite pathetic, to be honest, because we have been immigrating to one another's places for ages. Why do we fight now? It's ridiculous. Anyway, so the Kingdom of Kush was then created, and it also began to expand. Now, the Egyptian Empire was a bit aggressive at that time, unfortunately. Of course, they also wanted to expand. That's quite natural for empires. So they clashed a bit. But at some point, they also tried to stabilize and trade normally. So the Kingdom of Kush was basically trading from Egypt all the way to the Red Sea. So if you think of the Red Sea area, areas like Eritrea, going all the way to Yemen, places like that. And then the Egyptian Empire began to decline. So the Kush viceroys became more independent. So certain influence that the Egyptian Empire was decreasing, and they were able to continue influence of their own interests. However, they later did decline because of a battle with the Kingdom of Aksum. This is in Ethiopia. I just want to mention that if we think of ancient Egypt, we think of hieroglyphs and things like that. The Kingdom of Kush also had its own hieroglyphs, their own. So initially they were influenced by the ancient empire of Egypt, but they later created their own version. And then from that, they also created their own cursive. So that's really good. It's very important to highlight this because it also shows how intelligent African peoples are. This is a part of our history which is often very much ignored. So you can see here, for example, these are some of the hieroglyphs that they used to have. Then in the 6th century, Christian influence began to come into Sudan through missionaries. It didn't take hold though, so they started to move a bit further south. And then in the 9th century, this is when we had more Arab influence or Muslim influence. So they first initially raided areas of Egypt, and then once they'd gained land there, they started to move further down into the area that we now call Sudan. I don't know if it was mentioned earlier, but do we actually know where the word Sudan comes from? Does anyone know? Can somebody put up their hand who wants to answer? I heard a voice somewhere at the back. Yeah? Some? Yes? Yes, and in Arabic, how is it said? If I have it correct, it's something like Bilad al-Sudan.
Yes.
Something, yeah. So exactly, land of the land.
Black is food.
Yes.
That people black.
Yes.
The land of black people.
So considering what is happening in Sudan, this is also a bit ironic. I think you know what I'm trying to imply here. There's some irony here. But anyway, this also implies how Arabs saw Sudanese people. Perhaps we can take it as offensive, but at the same time, it's kind of just responses to one another's skin color. Sorry. Yes. So during this time, that's when they tried to spread Islam, but it also didn't really take a hold. There was a bit of resistance. They preferred their own traditional religions. They're quite proud of their culture. You know, most Africans are. And so they held on to it for over 6 centuries. So Islam only actually started to take a hold in the 15th century. And with that, the spread of Arabic also happened, but they also used to resist this for about 6 centuries, with the presence of Nilotic languages remaining quite strong throughout this time. Now, something interesting that happened is that the Nubian people and the Nilotic people, they are often matrilineal. Do we know what this means? So matrilineality is actually quite common throughout Africa. We are not patriarchal societies really, or even if we are, we usually still take the mother's line. Matrilineal. Matri is mother, lineal, the line. So even if you're taking something from a male line, it still has to pass through your mom, because your mom gave birth to you. And most African cultures, actually before colonialism, before Arab colonialism, they used to take this line. And so it is only when the influence of Islam and Arab culture came into Sudan that they started to take the father's line. And this was actually one of the ways in which they conquered Sudan. So the raiders that came would intermarry or do something quite impolite that I want to say to the women. And because they did this, they had to take they would take their property and pass it through the male line. Are we following so far? Then came the British conquest. So this would have started happening about 19th century, 1800s. So before this, there was the Ottoman Empire. They also had certain interests in Sudan, but the British wanted to take over. This was especially around the time when the British really wanted to expand their global influence. If you remember, the British Empire owned about 85% of the world, not just Africa, but of the world. So this is especially when they were fortifying their efforts. And so they took control over Sudan. Thankfully, they didn't stay long. And Sudan got rid of them in 1956, and that is when they became independent. They had a liberal democracy. So when we think of liberalism, this is kind of promoting the free market, also concepts of human rights, which are quite good, but the problematic part is the free market side. So it's good to participate in the global market, the free market, but it was not quite in Sudan's interests at that particular time, especially with other parts of the continent actually wanting a socialist way of life and a socialist way of gaining their independence. And so this caused a lot of unrest in the country. They actually started to have some issues which even resulted in coups. There were a series of coups within the country. And also at the back of this, we also had the issue of the civil war between the North and the South. So this technically started even during their liberation wars. It can be tracked, I think, about 1955, if I'm correct. So rebels already were having issues with how independence was going to be gained and who was going to control resources after that. And so they formed militias, etc., etc. And they began fighting, and this continued until 1972. Thankfully, a peace negotiation was made, and that stopped fighting for about 10 years. But then later in the southern region of Sudan, some oil was found. And as you know, oil is always causing problems for African countries, Asian countries, everywhere. And this inflamed the fighting again. So that was in 1983. And at that particular time, we had a president called Mmere. He had been ruling for 16 years, but he was gotten rid of. Familiar face? It was mentioned by the previous speakers. So this is when he was quite young. So, we have this kind of stereotype of African presidents, especially the dictators, remaining in power until they're very old. So I've kind of deliberately used this young picture to show that at some point in these people's lives, they were young and really they should have taken another direction in their life. But this is the path that they have chosen. So please don't take this. Let's not make these mistakes as youth. So Omar al-Bashir, he was in a military college in Cairo, and then he returned to Sudan. Once he got back, he started making quite a good military and political career, and then he led a coup in 1989. It was mentioned earlier. So he overthrew the civilian government at the time, and he started to be very problematic very quickly. He banned opposition, and he even banned trade unions. So even the workers' rights were suppressed. For unknown reasons, he began to align himself with a nationalist Islamic front. So this is actually defined as a terrorist group within Sudan. And with this alliance, he started to promote very fundamentalist Islamic values. So what I mean here is kind of some Islamic values which not really even following the religion. They're just kind of hard-line ideas. He officially became the president in 1993, and then in 1998 he signed a new constitution, which then uplifted the ban on political opposition, but he was very tactical, and he still used to suppress the opposition by banning them in the press and also banning freedom of expression. Throughout his time as president, he did attempt to make some ceasefire attempts with South Sudan. However, it didn't quite work. So in 2003, this is when a lot of rebels started to fight back. especially in the area called Darfur, which has been mentioned by other speakers, and it's quite a prominent region right now. So they launched an attack against Bashir in 2003, and he enlisted the militia, which was mentioned by Tasneem, the Janjaweed militia, against them. And they were very brutal, extremely brutal, as was mentioned, did horrible things there for the 5 years that they were fighting. Eventually, the United Nations decided to intervene 5 years later in 2008, and also the International Criminal Court decided to issue a warrant for arrest against Bashir. I'm sorry, I forgot it. Yes, there we are. So they issued a warrant for arrest against him in 2008. It didn't quite work out, but eventually in 2009 he was charged with some war crimes. In 2010 he was also charged with genocide, quite specifically. This is very important. He was tactical and he retired from his military position. Not because of any guilt, but just to run away from particular things. But unfortunately, in the background of this, the two states of Sudan and South Sudan, they separated. So we can see the map. So this map that I've used is actually showing the Darfur area, the one which is highlighted a bit lighter. So this is where some of the issues started. And then below, as you can see, we have South Sudan. Yeah. So this is when they had their independence in 2011. So finally, this ended decades of turmoil. Was anyone around at that time? Did anyone happen to be there? Did anyone happen to see it on television at the time? Yeah, so they seem very happy, despite particular things. So this meant that South Sudan could kind of control some of its resources a bit better. What was happening previously is that a lot of resources from the south were going up into the north to Khartoum. Of course, it is the capital, so that's quite a natural progression of resources, but they found it problematic because money was not coming back down to the south after these sales and so on were made. Now, unfortunately, South Sudan didn't remain as stable as it wanted to, and there were troubles there almost immediately. But anyway, in the northern side, Bashir started to become very unpopular. By 2015, when we had elections, he realized that the people really didn't want him. So especially in this year, he suppressed the media. People tried to boycott the elections, and also there was a very low turnout. This was despite having over 10 opposition parties. So imagine over 10 people were so disgruntled with Bashir that they decided to run against him. I think it was about 12 candidates. Now in 2018, as I've said there, the economic situation was probably the worst because there was a famine at that time as well. And so this especially fueled the uprisings and protests that were mentioned by the previous speakers. Finally, Bashir was taken out by a military coup in 2019. As was mentioned, there was a very short civilian government, but after that, they had to talk about a very robust transition. And in that transition, as was mentioned, we had A.R.M. And 2 months later, as was mentioned as well, we had the June 3rd massacre. These men were actually working together, but their business interests have gotten the best of them, and this is what has led them to fight. He has quite a lot of very interesting friends. As you know, he works with the United Arab Emirates, so he went to see Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan in 2022. So these are not exactly the best friends in the world, but these are who he choose to associate with. He has also signed a deal with Saudi Arabia to fight against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. If you have been following current affairs, you know that these are the rebels that are fighting against Israel at the moment. So again, these are really some very dubious actions. Tensions between himself and Al-Quran started to boil in April. So they especially began to fight at that time, and then they took physical action. So this was when the RSF launched an attack against Khartoum in April 2023. So this picture was taken, if you can see at the bottom, there's a man there just walking casually while disaster is unfolding around him, most unfortunately. Now, This is a complicated situation, as previous speakers have mentioned. Hemeti actually does have some support, ironically, despite carrying out very violent and horrific actions. The reason is, so if we go back, we have a relatively old man here, yes, and a relatively young one. So as you know, most of Africa's population is very young. So we cannot relate with someone of Alboran's age anymore. So unfortunately, there is sometimes alliance with the younger leader, despite what they are doing. There are some people who believe that Hemeti is getting rid of the old way of thinking, the Bashir way of thinking. And so this is what is causing them to align with him, wanting to get rid of Bashir's legacy and sort of create a new Sudan. It's also complicated because, unfortunately, this may cause another partition of Sudan. So as you've already seen, they've partitioned the south, and Darfur is in the west. So there is fear that that area may also partition. Our own regional mates is selling the ingredient within it. But we have to buy products from France, from UK, from US. That's ridiculous. Why can we not produce our own cosmetic products? Why are we not buying cosmetic products from Sudan, who has that very ingredient? It's just ridiculous. Then also the interest of oil. Why are we selling oil abroad? What about our own interest? Gold as well. Gold is involved in this. So Hemeti's company has taken control of Sudan's biggest gold mine in Sudan, but is selling it to the UAE. Who is benefiting from that really? It's not Africans. So we have to think of it in this way. Also Ethiopia, so the trade of sesame between Sudan and Ethiopia is becoming very difficult. Now let's think about the women. So as was mentioned, there was a revolution in 2019. If you remember the picture of the woman pointing up in the sky and chanting in front of people. So Sudanese women have always been involved in their liberation. So it's very common for women to actually lead protests.
Any of my Sudanese people know it. I'll be playing another song now.
to talk about Guinea-Bissau. There are 8,000 Guineans living in London. The strange is we are not known as Guineans, we are known as Portuguese Africans. But we came from one of the 5 countries that speaks Portuguese in Africa. It's called Guinea-Bissau. Ladies and gentlemen, the image here, you see Guinea-Bissau needs a peace, and also some of the images here. Comrades, brothers and sisters of the African Party family. We stand here today in London, a city that holds a sacred place in the history of Guinea-Bissau. It was here in 1971 that Ahmed Kaballo came to London and spoke at the University of London. He was persuaded, but he refused to fight only for Guinea. He said, no, the fight of PAIGC is for Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. Became the first leader to fight for 2 different countries to liberate them. So in that particular case, when Ahmed Kaballo came here to talk about that at the University of London, and the father of our nation, Ahmed Kaballo, stood before the world and did not come to beg for charity. Ahmed Kaballo came here to demand the recognition of the people of Guinea-Bissau that are decided to be free after more than 500 years of Portuguese rules. Today, I stand here, or we stand here for you, to this freedom Kaballo help is under siege. What happened in Guinea-Bissau on the 26th of November, a coup d'etat, which is a coup d'etat for the ballot box. I'm here to speak for the people of Guinea-Bissau who, on the 26th of November, witnessed a coup that is against the ballot box. It's not coup against people, it's a ballot box. After the election, for the first time, a candidate won the first round. The military decided that we have a coup d'etat. This is after the observers from the United Nations, observers from the United African, or observers from the European Union decided there's a winner. It's called Fernando Diaz da Costa. Right now, is a refugee at Nigerian embassy in Bissau. Against the constitution, the army dissolved the parliament. They dissolved the party politics simply because they dared to disagree with them. The former president, Maurice Carney, he banned major parties, including PAIGC, who's considered the biggest party in Africa today, the party that made the second best guerrilla war in the world after Vietnam is a PAIGC. 11 years fighting Portuguese, fighting NATO. So he believed that silencing people, I'm talking about Maurice Carney and the militaries, he could silence the people, but he was wrong. After banning the best political parties, the biggest political parties and individuals to run against him, he decided that 23rd of November is going to be the date of elections. All right then. So everybody was thinking that, okay, it's going to be, that's it. Go in there and win it with 100 and something MPs that the government has should have. On the 23rd of November, ladies and gentlemen, the people of Guinea-Bissau did that what was impossible. Despite intimidation, threats, and bans, they went to the polls. They did not vote for dictatorship. They voted for change. And they voted for Domingos Moreira and Fernando Diaz. These are the people right now. Domingos is in jail. Fernando Diaz is a refugee at Nigerian embassy. The process was transparent. Every single observer said it was peaceful. People went to the ballot box. We in London here went to ballot box. I went 1 o'clock in the morning to vote 8 in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. Everybody here in London, in Europe, we voted. So it was transparent and lawful. The votes were tallied at the voter assembly, compiled and published by the Regional Electoral Commission. That's the ECOWAS, African Union, European Union, including electoral authorities. The truth is so clear that even the regime's own machinery could not conceal it. The day before the Electoral Commission was about to announce who is the winner, I'm talking about Philip Nunes, former president of Mozambique. I'm talking about Goodluck Jonathan, former president of Nigeria, that went to Umar Sissoco, told him, listen, you lost. And he did the trick. He said he was detained and the military took power. They destroy everything. They destroy even the boxes, the ballot boxes that all are in the commission. So, but one day before those results, as I said, what was about to proclaim, the theater began. That is a theater. It's a coup against the people of Guinea-Bissau. It's a coup against the winner, who is Dr. Fernando Diaz. For the first time, it happened. A simulated coup. When Cabral spoke in this city, October day in 1971, he reminded the world that the truth must come first. The people are not fighting for ideas of everyone's head. No. They are fighting to win the material benefits, to their life, to live better. So, as I ask you today, how can our lives go forward when our leaders are imprisoned without any charge? I mean, we have a law in our country, in Guinea. I think there's a law also here. You cannot detain anyone for 24 hours without formal charge. And Domingos Mospereira has been now in jail for 53 days without any charge. This is a man who's been considered by African monitoring the greatest African leader of his generation in the last 9 years. So I repeat it again, Domingos Mospereira considered the greatest African leader of his generation. I'm not talking about Kwame Nkrumah, I'm talking right now. The greatest leader, African leader of his generation in the last 9 years is in jail, languishing in jail without any formal detention. So we are here as a Guinean, everybody with, can you stand up, people with from Guinea-Bissau here, please? Can you stand up, please? Thank you, thank you. We are here for 3 reasons, ladies and gentlemen. Only 3 reasons. Not only just for solidarity with people of Sudan, for those who had a chance to visit that magnificent country and the Mahdi Museum, a cradle of civilization, Sudan, but we also came here to seek your support to march with us for 3 reasons in Guinea-Bissau. First one, for the platform in London where Ahmed Kaballo spoke. First is to immediate release of all political prisoners in Guinea-Bissau. Secondly, to end the forced asylum of the winner of the elections in Guinea-Bissau, Dr. Diaz, Fernando Diaz, who's right now at Nigerian embassy as a refugee. And the third one, we want the conclusion of election, because ECOWAS went to Guinea now 3 times. They are talking about forming a government of coalition, and no, we don't want that. We want the election result to be read to know who is a winner for the first time, for us to have our independence in our economy. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
ones in transition, for the health and prosperity of the living, those newly arrived and those yet to come. Ashe. And most of all today, we do this for what? We do this for in support, in love, and in freedom for the people of Sudan. If you agree, say Asheo. All right, let's take it up.
As the capital of the United States of Africa. So in organizing Lumumba Day of Resistance each year, what we're saying is that Lumumba's dream lives, Fanon's dreams lives, Nkrumah's dreams lives, Mumme's dreams lives. This generation of Africans, we're going to build on what they laid out for us in advancing the Pan-African agenda, where Congo, because of its strategic location in the heart of the African continent, country the size of Western Europe, with the same mission that Lumumba laid out when he formed the Congolese national movement, the MNC in French. He said, comrades, we're here for one reason mainly, and that's a free Congo. And that's what people are organizing on the front lines around in the Congo. They're organizing to reclaim control of their land, reclaim control of their resources, reclaim control of their affairs, and ultimately reclaim control of their means of production. And that's the message that I would like to bring to you today, that folks on the ground, on the front lines, are organizing, movement building, in spite of the tremendous odds that are laid out against them. Now, when Lumumba was about to be assassinated, he wrote a last letter to his wife, Pauline. And in that letter to his wife, Pauline, Lumumba said to the Congolese people, he said, we're not alone. Africa, Asia, free and liberated people from every corner of the world will be found by the side of the Congolese. And it is that spirit from Lumumba's letter that inspires Friends of the Congo to mobilize on a global scale to be by the side of our Congolese brothers and sisters. I don't think I have to tell you in the audience how vital Congo is to the future of the African continent. Both the enemies of Africa and the Friends of Africa are present to this fact. When the chief of station, Larry Devlin of the CIA, chief of station of the CIA, Larry Devlin, wrote his book about how he overthrew Lumumba, he stated clearly, he said that we had to overthrow Lumumba. Because if we didn't overthrow Lumumba, not only would we have lost the Congo, we would have lost all of Africa. Why did he say he had to overthrow Lumumba? He had to overthrow Lumumba because Lumumba was a nationalist and a Pan-Africanist. In his grounding with the likes of Frantz Fanon, George Padmore, Kwame Nkrumah, in the All African People's Conference in Accra in 1958, the first Pan-African conference on the African continent, following the seminal Manchester Conference of 1945. It is there that Lumumba advanced his understanding of the place that Congo holds in the global African struggle. It is there that he was radicalized. He spent a tremendous amount of time with the likes of Félix Moumet, the revolutionary from the Cameroon, Frantz Fanon, who was just coming from Algeria, who really turned that conference upside down. And it's out of that conference where Fanon introduced the necessity of violence as a means for overthrowing the colonial order. It is out of that conference where we get the phrase, by any means necessary. That is, say, Africans were going to free themselves by nonviolent means and violent means, any means necessary, as Malcolm X took it up and popularized. So it is out of that hearth of the 58th Pan-African Conference that we get a radical Lumumba that saw and recognized the centrality of Congo to the future of the African continent. And he had that vision, along with Nkrumah, as Nkrumah laid out in the challenge of the Congo, that Congo would serve as the capital of the United States of Africa. So in organizing Lumumba Day of Resistance each year, what we're saying is that Lumumba's dream lives, Fanon's dreams lives, Nkrumah's dreams lives, Mmere dreams lives. This generation of Africans, we're going to build on what they laid out for us in advancing a Pan-African agenda where Congo, because of its strategic location in the heart of the African continent, country the size of Western Europe, what economists say is $24 trillion worth of natural resources found there, remains the center of the Pan-African struggle. So our appeal is in line with what Fanon stated in his remarkable work toward the African Revolution. He said, let us not forget that the fate of all of us is at stake in the Congo. And that's the message that we're bringing to you today, that the fate of all of us is at stake in the Congo. We encourage you to join us as we build this global constituency in order to protect the heart of the African continent, in order to be by the side of the over 100 million Congolese who are waging an indefatigable battle, not just for the Congo, but for Africa writ large. So thank you for providing us with the opportunity to bring this message to you. We encourage you to join us in this dignified pursuit of Congolese liberation, of African liberation. Go into freecongo.org, sign up and be a part of this movement for radical change in the Congo and on the African continent. So thank you very much for giving us this time to share this message with you. And free Sudan, free Congo. Peace.
Out for your mouths. And make sure when you're breathing, to breathe into your stomach. If your belly isn't blowing up or getting bigger as you're breathing in, you're not taking a deep enough breath. So please again, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And one more deep breath. In through your nose and out through your mouth. Thank you so much. screaming for change. Believe me when I say it's madness, madness. Liberate your mind and your body and your soul. It's madness, madness. Trying to unlearn all the truths I was told. It's madness, madness. Liberate your mind and your body and your soul. It's madness, madness. Trying to unlearn all the truths I was told.
Doing the same things over and over and over and over and expecting it to change is madness. I'm looking back, senselessness disguised as happiness. We're in the absence of compassion and humanity from the same people that decide the taxes. But I guess like their wealth, the airstrikes have to trickle down. And I jump when I hear the thunder, so I can't imagine a missile sound. I'm learning that being comfortable can still be a concern. There's so much to unlearn from being a child. And I can't shake the feeling now. I turn on the news, see politicians that can't imagine they're killing.
It's madness, madness. Liberate your mind and your body and your soul. It's madness, madness. Trying to unlearn all the truths I was told. It's madness, madness. Liberate your mind and your body and your soul. It's madness, madness. Trying to unlearn all the truths I was told. Praying for some guidance, Lord, please get me through the dark. We've been searching for the answers. All this noise, please make it stop.
Check. I'm tired of running this rap race while cats play around and we struggle to catch brains.
Oh yeah, I'm tired.
It's my work, it goes unpaid. I'm trying to be unfazed while I'm in the fire still. The flames rise higher, they go for the lies of empire. Heavy is the head, but what's the weight if a ruler's a liar? We've been bellowing, our voices echoing a song of pain, but we ain't no choir. I'm tired.
In the school books, baby, it was hidden, but the truth runs deeper than was written. Our stories they've been told but forbidden. We found our escape in the rhythm. It's the rhythm, it's the rhythm. But it's madness, madness. Liberate your mind and your body and your soul. It's madness, madness. Trying to unlearn all the truths I was told. It's madness, madness. Liberate your mind and your body and your soul. It's madness, madness. Trying to unlearn all the truths I was told. Talk to the people around you, educate yourself, pick up a book, don't use TikTok as a source of information, fact check everything that you see. We're in a spiritual warfare and we need to keep our wits about us and we need to stay connected. Thank you, Sai.
Thank you, Khalid.
This next song I'm going to do for you, before we do it, we're going to take another deep breath because life is heavy and the words are heavy and we have to be aware of that. So I want us to just all take a deep breath. So if you guys want to close your eyes again, if you don't want to close your eyes, it's not by force, you can keep them open. So we're going to take a breath in through our nose and out through our mouth. And I'm going to remind you to breathe into your stomach so you get a nice full deep breath. In through our nose, out through our mouth. And one more in through our nose and out through our mouth. the excuses I give and you take on my losing. Been extending myself, trying to be a better person. Here are all the things I've been learning. Take time, relax your mind. I'm tired of all the excuses I give and they take on my losing. Sometimes I'm afraid I might lose it. Blinded by the lights on the stage, I always choose this. Feeling dizzy from the pace of the city. I'm in London town, it might knock you down. But needed an extra minute to stop my head spinning. Cause I don't know what it is. I don't even know where I've been. But I'm tired of all the excuses I give and you take on my losing. Been extending myself, trying to be a better person. Here are all the things I've been learning. Take time, relax your mind. But I'm tired. Always the one to extend my time. I just need some peace of mind. Cause they've looked me in my eyes and told me lies. I thought they were heaven in disguise. I might lose it, I might. And I might lose it, I might. And I might lose it, I might lose. And I might lose it. I've been extending myself, trying to be a better person. Here are the things I've been learning. Take time, relax your mind. Been extending myself, trying to be a better person. Here are all the things I've been learning. Take time, relax your mind. I'm tired of all the excuses. If you take on my losing. Keep extending yourself, guys. I have one more song for you guys. And I wrote this song, it's called Joy. I feel like joy is a very important part of the resistance because we have to energize ourselves to keep ourselves going. We have to feed back into ourselves, especially in a system that is working very hard to make us forget that we're part of a machine and be slaves, and that's not what we want. So I wrote this song because I've been praying for some joy and I'm manifesting joy for us. Are you guys feeling like you want to sing? Yeah? Okay. I'm gonna show you how the chorus goes, and when it comes, you're gonna sing it with me, okay? And this is, for those who believe in God, this is a prayer. For those of you who don't believe in God, this is a manifestation. And there's so many of us in the room, the energy is loud. So the joy is definitely coming. Okay, so it goes like this. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some. Yeah? Sing it with me. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some. We're gonna do it 2 more times, yeah? I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some. And again, let me hear you. Use a diaphragm.
Praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some.
Alright, guys, we're gonna run in. There goes another second. I feel we've wasted now. Caught up in all the questions, but no one's asking how. How can I feel the laughter? How can I make this fun? Martin the child is healing. I know I'm not the only searching for that. Some
something deeper. Life I know could be so much sweeter, but there's still no end in sight. Been fighting my whole life for what I've given my all. In time, the answers will come. Are you ready? I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy, 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 joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy, 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 joy. Snatch back another moment as we reclaim it now. The future's in the making, and you can't stop me now. I fight for liberation. This time I scream it loud. Trapped in this broken system. I think it's tiny, but it's searching for that something deeper. Life I know could be so much sweeter. Uphill climb, but there's still no end in sight. Been fighting my whole life. I'm asking God, please won't you save me? Working on my dean, had to stop it for the breeze. I open my heart and clear my mind now. Tap back in, let the lesson sink in. I open my heart and let the joy ring. Are you guys ready? I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy, 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 joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy. I'm praying for some joy, 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 joy. I'm praying for some joy. You got it?
Praying for some joy. I'm praying for some
joy, 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 joy. I'm praying for some
joy.
I'm praying for some
joy.
I'm praying for some joy, 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 joy. Oh, joy.
Just my bad luck to be after such a wonderful singer. No one to listen to me. I will try my best. Comrades, colleagues, and friends, you heard today very good account about the Sudan. She spoke about the war in details. Sasha, I think, the other, spoke about the history of Sudan in details. Why I'm here? I put to myself a task, very difficult, to achieve in the 15 minutes assigned to me. It is to answer the question, why we have a war? Because the events of history just tell you who comes, who goes. While main question is we had several civil wars, and this is the most disastrous. And you don't believe it, I can answer it in one sentence. There is a war because we failed to achieve the task of the national democratic revolution in the Sudan, to make the transformation from a colonial state to a real independent state. That is the reason. All are details. But the main thing that we failed to achieve this big transformation. Yesterday, I was listening to a lecture in Manchester, and one of my friends from Sudanese ladies, the lecture about trade unionism under the transitional period, asked a question. She said, why the hell we are retreating? We are going back. Not only going back, every time is worse than the before. And the lecturer said, well, this needs a research. Let us do that research together. And the answer is the same. We failed to achieve the task of the national revolution. We failed to turn on the colonial state into a real independent state. Because that means there are things here, if we did, we won't have this silly war. Very thing, we didn't change the state itself. It is the same state apparatus that we have inherited from the colonial regime. And you can't say a colonial state equals an independent state. This is not logical, and even contradiction in terms. And we inherited some problems there we need to solve. Among these problems is that we inherited a colonial economy, which is disintegrated on regional level. No region is integrated to the other. On vertical level, that there are different developments. Very high development in a place, a very backward economy in another place, very rich people, very poor people. Disintegration, even sectoral. There is no relation between the different sectors of the economy. We have a country which the first thing you look at, and that is why one of the British journalists said, God laughed when created Sudan. Because he created a wonderful country where there is a diverse in everything. Diverse in population. And that leads to diverse in culture, in religion, in ethnicity and tribes. Diverse in geography. You go from the desert to the rich savanna. Diverse in the, you have plains, clay plains, mountains, and goes, which is a beautiful Sahara, which can produce the solar energy panels. All that in one country. You have Nile and rivers, you have different rates of rains. So it is a wonderful country. That is why God laughed. He brought all these things together. Unfortunately, we failed in bringing it really together. And that failure from identity, because when you have diverse population, you can't reduce them to one element of that. You have population who are African, who are Sudanese Arabic, who are Sudanese, ancient Sudanese, the first people on earth, these Nubians. She told you that they were there 30,000 years ago. And they built civilizations, series of civilizations. And all this needed unity in diversity, needed us to recognize that we are Sudanese, nothing else, just Sudanese. Not Arabs, not Muslims, not Christians, not anything, but Sudanese who are of different ethnic and tribal peoples. And as Sudanese, we unite, we make a new country, we make a country which left by the colonial regime disintegrated, we integrated. We failed to do that. We failed to do that. And there are, yes, there are reasons, but there are mistakes also. We communists, we think the petty bourgeoisie which joined our party contributed to this failure twice. By organizing a coup on the 25th of May, 1969, against the will of the party. After 2 years, by organizing another coup, which is leftist, in 1971. Why? They were progressive. What is it? No. When you change your political activity to military activity, you are lost because you left the people. The people make the change, not the few. And in the two experiences, we lost the people. We destroyed a popular movement which we built by hard work since August 1946 when we... And no solution for the war is to return to agenda number 1. Achieve the basic transformation in the Sudan. Achieve the national democratic revolution task from democracy and agrarian reform to industrialization on the economic side. Cultural revolution, integration of Sudanese population, and democratization on the other side. Without that, any peace is just a moment of joy for a while, and then we are broken down. For a peace which will be sustainable and continuous, we need to change the Sudan. That is the question, مش كده? And you work on it. We are working on it. There is no way for any liberation without the people. You organize the people. You bring the people back to their organizations and places. You can. And those who dream that by using the Janjaweed we will destroy 1956 state are just dreaming. Because no one fight for another. Everyone fight for himself. And the Janjaweed, who are the Janjaweed? Let us forget about what is said they are coming from abroad. Let us assume they are Sudanese, all of them. They are Arab Sudanese. So are we going to replace the Arab of the center by the Arab of the West? Did we solve the diversity problem?
Racism is still there.
Huh?
Racism is still there.
And you can prove it. I think she proved it in the morning when she told about the genocide. Who are killed in the war in Darfur? They are the real people of Darfur, not the Arab who came from abroad, the Four and the Masalit and the Berti and the Zakhawa. So what is the difference between a Janjaweed and the 1956 state? But you can say the 1956 state is more better, isn't it? Huh? Yeah. They all use coercion, whether it is military coercion or economic coercion or legal coercion, to exploit the people under the slogan of being Arab Islamist. And now these are Arab Islamists. So you are doing nothing. The change is how all the Sudanese people from different backgrounds, different ethnic groups, come together to identify themselves as Sudanese. And they are compelled to identify themselves as African. Because
it's been going for long.
Huh?
What do you think the next generation or the younger generation, how they think or how they behave so to stop the war and not be
We're going to have a panel after the speech.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. He wants to stop. He wants to stop the war. And in that there are many scenarios. Scenario number one, the Janjaweed defeats the army and the war ends. And that is a disaster. Scenario number two, the army, which is controlled by the Islamists, defeat the Janjaweed, and that is another disaster. And this was the cause of the war, because they want to finish the revolution. They want to come back to power. They want to remove. Now, is it possible that a foreign force compel them to stop the war? What sort of pressure they do? If they say we'll stop arming both sides, which is a very good condition to stop the war, they can't do it. They can't do it. Because the Americans And the British, I spoke to the British even here in this country. They can't tell the Emirates to stop arming the Janjaweed because they have interest between the British arm industry, not the British arm industry, the British economy and the United Arab Emirates. And because the United Arab Emirates is investing $3 trillion in the United States, the United States cannot tell them to stop the war. What about the army? There are countries which has interest in that. Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And they are all arming the. So you are making conditions for continuing the war. The solution must come from the people of the Sudan. The people of the Sudan who compelled peacefully the British to get out of the country, who overthrew the first military regime in October Revolution, who overthrew the second military regime in 1985, who overthrew the third military regime in December, April Revolution 2018, 2019. And this, the unity of these people on the ground, not because we had experience before of having the an alliance abroad against al-Bashir, and it did nothing. In reality, it made the popular movement waiting for a liberation coming from outside. Never came. When they finished that and knew that there is nothing coming in 2009 and the separation of the South in 2011, they began rebuilding the popular movement for a revolution. After 7 years, they did that. They waited for an alliance abroad from 89 to 2011, and nothing happened. After 2011, when the masses took their decision to organize themselves, they made a revolution. They made a revolution. They made it in 2013, it fell. 2018, it continued for 6 months. 4 of them were very active months. She spoke about it, about the sitting in, and they overthrew al-Bashir. The people can. Let us organize the people. That is our message. We can't say we can, because we are against any military takeover. We are against any war. Since 1953, we stopped any talk about the Chinese way of revolution, which later became the Vietnamese way of revolution, the Cuban way of revolution. We insisted in the Sudan that peaceful revolutions will continue. The problems came to us when people were not convinced and went and took power by coup d'etat. And they destroyed our. Now, that is the situation. I answered the supposed question you want me to answer. But I have a question for you to answer. What can you do to help us? I leave that with you, or should I throw some light?
Show it.
You know, we want you to put pressure on the British government. So, by demonstration, by writing to your MPs, by supporting the Sudanese community. That is the first thing. And it is very important because, you know, the British government changed. At least they tried to show us they changed their position in Palestine because you were on the streets. Because you wrote to your MPs, because you put pressure on the government. That will be a great thing. That will be a great thing. There are individuals and groups who are subject to discrimination. Their rights are confiscated. They are either detained or put to an illegal and unjust trial. Some of them condemned to death. And that's also your role. And I tell you, don't tell me that what can we do? Because I'm an ex-prisoner of conscience. When Amnesty wrote to me the first time I was in prison, I received the letter. Its effect on me, on the detainees, was great. And I tell you, every government is afraid that you accuse her of human rights violation. Even government like Oval Burhan or Hemeti. They want to appear as good guys in the international community. Don't let them to deceive the world. When we tell that there is a Sudanese in prison, you wrote, you speak, you tell Amnesty, you tell Human Rights Watch, whatever. So if we make this solidarity real, I am not going to ask you more because I don't know what you can do, but you can think of me, for example. I have a son who will speak to you at the end of this rally, Ahmed Kaballo. Ahmed Kaballo has raised up now to more than 25,000 pounds, help in digging a well in Khartoum North for the water of the neighborhood. Okay? Can we do that for another place? Can we send them medicine, food? I leave that with you.
For the next performance, Richard Olatunde, a renowned British Nigerian percussionist, producer, educator, and expert in African drumming, celebrated for his work across multiple musical genres, including Africa. Please put a warm welcome to Richard Olatunde.
Brothers and sisters, I know it's been a relatively extensive and long day, but I'm a vibes man. So when I come and speak, it's not a spectator experience. It's a very participatory experience. Is everybody with me? You don't sound like it. Is everybody with me? Now we're there in England and England cold. So feel free to generate as much vibration in the space while I'm speaking as you wish. And as much energy as you receive from me, feel free to return it. Is everybody with me? I greet you 10-9-1. Be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. The creative life force of the universe, as referred to by the many names across the length and breadth of the African world view, Oludumare, Onyame, Odomankoma, Unkulu Nkulu, and Zambi, Mogai Ngai, the creator of the universe, has spoken in our various African languages. We say, Kudzai Mudzimu Mukulu, give praises unto our great ancestors, because our ancestors are indeed worthy to be praised. In particular, our ancestors who fought on behalf of our people, our liberation globally. We hail our ancestors without shame. We hail our ancestors without fear. We hail our ancestors without favor. Somebody one day told us that we should be ashamed of our ancestors and that our ancestors are not worthy of honor and of praise. And we stand here today convicted that we will restore dignity and honor to the names of our ancestors. So we honor our ancestors in this moment. Give praises unto our great ancestors. Abidi Tumi, Abidi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people on the face of Mother Earth. Free Sudan!
Free Sudan!
Free Sudan! Free Congo! Free Congo! Free Haiti! Free Haiti! Brothers and sisters, that's our brother Maurice earlier raised the name of Papa Patrice Lumumba. I want to reinforce that right about now in this moment, because we are but one day from the anniversary of the assassination of Papa Patrice Lumumba and Maurice Ompolo and Joseph Okito. Never forget the names Maurice Ompolo and Joseph Okito, who were assassinated alongside Papa Patrice Lumumba, men who knew that their allegiance to what Papa Patrice Lumumba was standing for would ensure that they were going to meet their death, and decided that our Baba Patrice Lumumba should not die alone. Are you hearing me, brothers and sisters? Let us not forget the name Maurice Ompola and Joseph Okito as we stand here in this moment. I also want to give thanks for the fact that I'm able to speak just after our Baba Sidgi Kaballo. My elder, I'm familiar with you and your work through the work of your son, Ahmed Kaballo. And I interviewed him some time ago, and your name was raised in the conversation about your work and your dedication to your family and to protect the family home, back home. And so you are known through the work of your son. So I just want to say it's an honor to be in this space with you, to hear from you, and to meet you in the flesh, Baba. So thank you very, very much. Yeah, thank you for letting me. Brothers and sisters, I am an African from the Caribbean, principally a child of the nations indigenously referred to as Yamaka, popularly known as Jamaica, and Wadadli Wa Omoni, popularly referred to as Antigua and Barbuda. I'm an African, a descendant of those who were trafficked across the Atlantic in what is referred to as the so-called transatlantic so-called slave trade. But carrying the legacy of those who never forgot where they came from and who they were, and in the amalgamation of what it means to be African, affirmed an African identity out of the amalgamation of Igbo and Yoruba and Bakongo and Mande and Asante and Mbundu and etc., etc. And so we stand in solidarity today with Sudan as varied people, but not as distinct in what it means to be an African. Is everybody with me? Yes. I am an African. So therefore, what happens in Sudan affects me. What happens in Congo affects me. What happens in IET affects me. And I'm also a student. I'm a student of the Pan-African liberation fight, having been born in the movement, as was mentioned earlier. And Sudan has always been a part of my Pan-African upbringing, giving thanks to the Pan-African Society, London for Sudan, the PAIGC, and the A-APRP for organizing this event. But I want people to understand that the sojourn of the Pan-African community in solidarity with Sudan is a long-standing one. I grew up with the Sudanese People's Liberation Movement operating in the Pan-African community in this country. A brother called Dane, who was a member of that organization, was well known to my father, but actually visited my home and conversated with my father and educated us on the history and the politics of Sudan. And so we've been standing in solidarity with our people in Sudan, and obviously through the Sudanese People's Liberation Movement. That lens is often associated primarily with what is called South Sudan today. But understanding that the leader of that movement at that time was calling for a one Sudan, and I'll come back to that in a bit. But my remark today, brothers and sisters, as I'm here to learn, and sometimes I prefer to listen than to speak, especially when I'm in an environment with such illustrious elders. But I've been asked to speak, so I will. Is focused on the idea of power and what it means to wield power. And the fact that we are discussing today what is referred to as a proxy war. And a proxy war, essentially, brothers and sisters, is when groups of people are made satellites of other groups of people and are made to fight in the interest of other groups of people who impose their power on them. And I submit to you that there is nowhere in the African world that Africans are fighting each other, that we are fighting in the interest of ourselves. That in each of those places, there is a power dynamic that has us fighting in the interest of some other group of people. Is everybody with me? Power is the only argument that satisfies man, the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey said. Except the individual, the nation, the race has power that is exclusive. That individual, nation or race will be bound by the will of others who possess power. I'm an African from the Caribbean. Currently, the waters of the Caribbean are being militarized increasingly by the United States of America. The same government who kidnapped the president of Venezuela but a couple of weeks ago and the first lady and has them in a kangaroo court in New York right now. Is everybody with me? Yes. But remember and realize that that act was the culmination of a year of increased militarization in the region of the Caribbean. That act was the culmination of a number of years of the control and intrigue in the nation of Haiti. And whenever America has moved against Haiti, they have been able to count on sellouts and traitors from around the Caribbean to sanction their actions so they can get in through the back door into Haiti. Is everybody with me? What's happening at the moment, brothers and sisters, is that the American government is using its economic power to put pressure on various different Caribbean nations so that it never presents enough of a threat to American interests in the region of Central, South America, and the Caribbean. And so when America came and said they want to put military bases on some island, a lot of them said, no, we don't really want no American military bases, you know. And America said, all right, no visa to Antigua, no visa to Dominica, St. Lucia. And suddenly we're hearing news that these nations are now willing to accept any kinds of refugees that America wants to deport from the United States, except Haitians. At the same time, we're hearing that because the president of Trinidad and Tobago has declared and made of herself a willing and unashamed stool pigeon for the United States of America right now, and she has criticized Antigua and some other islands on this front. Antigua is now talking about banning products from Trinidad and Tobago. Are you following me?
Yes.
But both of them, Antigua and Barbuda and Trinidad and Tobago, at least as far as their governments are concerned, are willing to dance to the tune of the United States of America, fighting each other, answering to the interests and the demands of the United States of America. Proxy war, military, economic, social, whatever it is, brothers and sisters. Neither of them are serving the interests of the masses of the people in those nations and across the region of the Caribbean. And so if all that I've been able to learn and glean studying Sudan in the last few years and listening to brothers and sisters today, a similar situation is taking place. That all of these wars are serving the interests of people that don't come from these nations, that we are killing and addressing each other in their interests. But I also want to acknowledge a feeling that I feel sometimes as a Pan-Africanist, been running around related to issues of Haiti and Congo and Kenya and Sudan. And sometimes I want to acknowledge the feeling, brothers and sisters, because I know some of you feel it like I do sometimes. The feeling of helplessness when you hear about an atrocity taking place somewhere. And the question was asked earlier, what can we do? And sometimes we don't know what to do. Just me? It's just me, right? It's not just me. It's not just me. Are you sure? If you feel me, let me know you feel me. If you feel me, let me know you feel me. I feel like that sometimes. Like I don't know what to do. That's what I want to do something. Like there must be something that I can do from where I'm sitting to stop the murder, to stop the rape, to stop the displacement, to give food where there is no food, to comfort a baby where their parents are no longer living. I feel like that sometimes, and I want to acknowledge that is a feeling that we feel sometimes, because these issues are massive. They're big. And as our elder was detailing it to us just a minute ago, that the tentacles and the dynamics are so intertwined with the global economy as we know it, and global politics as we know it. It's not simple. The solutions are not simple. But I want to say, brothers and sisters, that even though we may feel helpless we are not hopeless, and that in our solidarity that we demonstrate, even in this small way as we do it today, there is hope for our people. And our job is to magnify and maximize the quality of that hope in functional organization in the interest of our people. But we must be able to connect the dots between Sudan and Congo, between Congo and Haiti, between Haiti and Jamaica, between Jamaica and Nigeria and Ghana. We must be able to connect the dots. Why? Because the proxy wars and the powers that exist are global. They are not isolated in Britain and France and America. When America moves, it moves. Even when they're arguing, it moves with France and Britain's interest in mind. You're not hearing me, I said. They're beefing right now, right? But in their beef, the product of their beef between Europe and America is to ensure that what? Europe puts more military funding into their budget. Why? To protect white interests around the world. Sudan ain't gonna do it by itself. You never heard what I said. Sudan is not going to do it by itself. Congo is not going to do it by itself. It takes for us to turn our solidarity into viable and functional organization across the masses of African people to solve these problems. The only way it's going to get done, and finally I'll say this. I spoke about my interview with Brother Ahmed Kaballo, and in the interview he mentioned the ancestor John Garang and a documentary that Al Jazeera had done in relation to the assassination of John Garang. And the fact that just before the assassination, John Garang had gone to Uganda for a meeting. And it was said in the documentary that whilst he was in Uganda, he had met with officials of the American government. And the meeting didn't go well. Documentary said, one individual said, the meeting didn't go well. Why? Because America realized they couldn't do nothing with John Garang. At one time they thought they could work with him. But they realized from the meeting that John Garang was not going to, in this potential separation between North and South Sudan, to give them access to the oil wealth in the way that they wanted to. In other words, he was not going to suit American interests. He was not going to be a proxy for American interest, in that they realized they could do nothing with John Garang. I thought about that, I said, the rest of my life, I want to make of myself the kind of man that if the American government looks at me, if the British government looks at me, if the French government looks at me, they say, we can't do nothing with him. We can't do nothing with that man. And I think that all of us need to make of ourselves those kinds of individuals. That they look on us and realize, when they look on the masses of African people, they can't do anything with us. Yeah. They realize that we are no longer interested in serving their interests. The challenge for us at this moment in time, brothers and sisters, we spoke and we heard from members of the PAIGC. And Brother Ahmed Kaballo said something, in a speech called National Liberation and Culture. He said, to truly colonize a people is the attempt to neutralize or destroy their cultural life. Their cultural life. And he goes on to affirm the revolutionary application of culture within the context of our liberation fight. And on that note, I want to assert that one of the defining aspects of how we're going to win is the assertion and the affirmation of a well-defined and asserted African identity, the primacy of an African identity over and above all else, and the allegiance to the African identity and the African people. Many of these wars and proxy wars and so on are fought, as has been illuminated today, because of our allegiance to and our affinity to identities over and above, and sometimes in direct conflict with our Africanness. And it is the affirmation of a unified African identity and an allegiance to it that allows us to overcome it. What is a French identity to a liberated African with an African mind and an African heart? What is a British identity to a liberated African with an African mind and an African heart? What is an Arabic identity to a liberated African with an African mind and an African heart? The only reason why these identities are able to divide and be used against us and we will destroy ourselves in allegiance to them is because we have an affinity towards those identities. We give them primacy within our own mind and in our own heart. And the only way to resolve that, brothers and sisters, is the affirmation of a unified spiritual, cultural identity that puts the allegiance to ourselves as African people over and above all other considerations. I give thanks for your space and your listening ears, brothers and sisters.
Hi, thank you all for coming. Before I start, I'm going to give a trigger warning. I am going to be talking about Sudanese women specifically, and I'm going to be speaking about their experiences. So I am going to mention sexual violence. So feel free to take a step outside if you need to, because I am going to have to be quite explicit with it. So as we all know, Sudan has been in crisis, and it has been since April 2023, with the war that has broken out. The war has not ended, neither has the genocide in Darfur. It's not simply ignorance or mistake that despite the horrifying reports of those who have escaped in fashion after its siege by the RSF on the 26th of October 2025, Sudanese voices are rarely heard in the media. At the root of this dehumanization is crucially anti-Blackness, racial capitalism, and imperialism. We know very well what the interests of those that are involved in this counter-revolutionary proxy war and genocide are. It is resource extraction, it is profit, and it is taking advantage of Sudan's geographical location. Today, I want to talk about how to amplify marginalized voices, and in particular, Sudanese women's voices. Women have historically been used as weapons of colonialism, imperialism, and genocide. You can see that in the United States of America, with the transatlantic slave trade, with Argentina, where women and rape has been used as a violent patriarchal act designed to humiliate, to culturally violate, to dehumanize, and to force women, particularly Black women, to bear children of their perpetrators and to erase the Black race.
Speak this. Speak.
And it's of no surprise that Sudanese survivors of the El Fashion massacre that fled to Chad report of the RSF killing people as if they were flies, raping both mothers and their daughters as young as 12. The fight against imperialism must include the fight against the patriarchy. We should ensure that Sudanese women's voices are not ignored, are not hidden, are not merged into vague passive victims that the West often portray them as.
Absolutely.
We shouldn't downplay the experiences for our own comfort. Let's say it as it is, it's rape and it's genocide. Acknowledging and amplifying Sudanese women's voices is the first step forward as allies to their liberation. Children as young as 1 have been raped. Hundreds of women have taken their own lives to avoid being subject to sexual violence. Women have been violated in front of their own families. Some instances, sexual violence has been so brutal that girls, their healths have deteriorated and they've died from it. Girls as young as 15 have been found pregnant by aid workers, yet despite the absence of professional mental health care and medical health care, Sudanese women have themselves organized support sessions between each other, working to break the cultural silence surrounding rape and abuse. they have made their own support groups. And significantly, Sudanese women have been at the forefront of mutual aid, leading to the grassroots of emergency response rooms and running community kitchens. Sudanese women are not just passive victims. They are people who have had lives and dreams before this war, and we should acknowledge it. And despite their crucial role in the front lines of providing life-saving aid, women have been excluded from diplomatic peace talks and from the narrative portrayed by Western media. I'm speaking up about Sudan. Please speak up about Sudanese women, not only as victims of horrifying violence, but also as individuals with the right to sexual health care, reproductive and psychological medical services, and political representation. Thank you.
Speaker, the second Kaballo. Ahmed is a journalist, strategist, and a Pan-Africanist and organizer whose work sits at the intersection of media, political education, and grassroots organizing. As a founder of the Great African Stream and Sovereign Media, which many actually mainstream forces try to repress. He has played a key role in building some of the most influential independent platforms, amplifying African and diasporic perspectives, challenging dominant narratives, and centering stories often pushed to the margins. Deeply connected to Sudan and the wider Pan-African movement, Ahmed brings a sharp analytical lens to questions of power, justice, and global solidarity. His work is driven by a commitment to accountability, collective liberation, and the belief that informed communities are essential to meaningful change. Whether through media, organizing, or public lectures, Ahmed's contribution lies in his ability to connect struggles across borders and articulate them with clarity, integrity, and action. It is a revolutionary honor to welcome Ahmed Kaballo.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And let me apologize in advance. I've got a really bad chest infection, so I'm going to be speaking a lot slower than I normally speak. And I won't be giving you the normal energy that I have, and certainly won't be matching the energy of my brother Shaka that just lit up that space over there in the UK. But firstly, when we're talking about Sudan, I'd really insist that we don't say that it went wrong. Sorry, it went wrong in 2023. I'd argue that Sudan went wrong in 1956. Yeah, as my elder PLO Lumumba says, it doesn't go wrong, it starts wrong. Sudan, much like Nigeria and many of these post-colonial African states, saw the state as a mechanism, the elites that took over the state saw the state as a mechanism to enrich themselves, much like the colonial powers before them. We've never been able to break free from the idea that if you're in government office, your role is to develop the whole nation. And the seeds of what we saw in 2023, April 15th, 2023, was a culmination of that. It was a combination of decades of underdevelopment in the periphery regions, decades of civil war, 2 civil wars, the longest civil wars in Africa, decades of political, economic marginalization. All of that became the perfect storm that led to the war. And unless those issues are addressed, then even after this war is settled, we'll have more and more wars. And, you know, the issue of identity, of course, is critical because, yes, it's about economic grievances, but the way that the state, since 1956, until the December Revolution, when there was an attempt to change that, has managed to mask over its unwillingness to develop outside of the state capital, is through the weaponization of identity, weaponization of who is deserving of development, who is deserving of resources, and who's not. Sorry.
Take your time, bro.
Sorry. It's just the kids have gone back to school. They've come back with all their viruses, and I'm struggling a little bit. But I'm such a big fan of the All African People's Revolutionary Party and what you guys are doing, and the fact that you've done this for Sudan. I didn't want to cancel. Sorry. So the question is, what role does identity play in all of this? Well, of course, Sudanese people have Arab identity, African identity, Sudanese identity. They're a mixture of many different cultures. But the question I ask is, in Yemen, they're also a mixture of different cultures. In Saudi Arabia, they're also a mixture of different cultures. How come in Saudi Arabia nobody claims to be African? It's because it's a question about power. Yeah. The reason why you meet a Senegalese guy in Paris and he'll tell you he's French, but you'll never meet a European in Dakar who will tell you who's Senegalese. It's about power. We need to understand that the only way that we can become powerful within the African continent is if we start understanding that our future lies in the African continent. Yeah. Our role with what they call the Middle East, what we call West Asia, what has it brought Sudanese people? We participated in the Saudi-led war in Yemen. What did it achieve? The promise that the Emiratis and the Saudis gave was, if you give us your young men to die on the ground while we fight from the fighter jets, we will sort out a rapprochement with the West. We will get the state sponsor of terror designation lifted. We'll let you back into the club. Yeah, that didn't happen. Only when Sudan signed the A.R.M Accords, and I interviewed the Minister of Information, who told me, they said that it doesn't matter if you're in a democratic transitional process. It doesn't matter if you're moving towards democracy. It doesn't matter if you're lifting some of these draconian laws that determine how women are dressed. Only if you sign these A.R.M Accords will we lift the state sponsor of terror designation. Yeah, even though normalizing with Israel or not normalizing with Israel had nothing to do with us being put on the state sponsor of terror designation. So right now, the future lies in somehow developing a Sudanese identity that's all-encompassing, that encompasses women. One of the problems in the transitional process, even though women led the revolution, they were marginalized from the transitional civilian government. Again, the same groups that were marginalized from independence were marginalized again in the transitional civilian government. And beyond Khartoum state, yeah, Nigeria is ranked as having the most people living in extreme poverty, but Sudan, before the war, had the biggest disparity between the state capital and the periphery regions. That was always going to bring anger, war, and frustration. Yeah. So the war started in April 2023, but the Nuba Mountains, the war never stopped. In Darfur, the war never stopped. Right. The war, when South Sudan became independent, it's been at war since. So the fundamental questions, the contradictions that lie at the heart of Sudanese state is always going to cause a constant state of war. And this is something that people that live within the state capital have just ignored, completely ignored. I've been in houses, Sudanese houses, where a news report comes on about what's going on in Darfur. They changed the channel. Let me put on the film from Mossad, from Egypt. It's starting. Yeah, we can't ignore the flames that are engulfing our country, thinking that it will never come towards the center. It will always come to the center. That's what a fire does. A fire doesn't stay confined a fire spreads. So here's what I would say. At the moment, all efforts need to be made to defeat the Rapid Support Forces, a genocidal militia backed by the UAE that is determined to partition Sudan. And if it can't partition Sudan, it needs to defeat Sudan. However, once they are defeated, and they will be defeated, inshallah, they will be defeated, we need to figure out the conditions that led to the rise of the militia force in the first place. We need to figure out the conditions of how an army controls so much of the Sudanese economy, so much of the exports and imports, so much of the finances that run the country is ran by an army which is set up to defend the country, not loot from the country. So, like you asked me to expand this. This is a contradiction that doesn't just exist within Sudanese borders. These contradictions exist in Nigeria. These contradictions exist in Congo, where the people of Kinshasa, unfortunately, are completely detached from what's going on in Goma, what's going on in North Kivu, Southern Kivu. So we need to find a way to understand that we are not atomized people. The only way that we have power is through unity, first on a national level, then on a continental level. Yeah, the way that Sudan is being attacked right now is through its neighbors. The UAE is supplying the RSF through Chad, and Chad is the way that the gold leaves Darfur and makes its way to Dubai. If we were united people, this would be impossible. Ethiopia is another place in which weapons are coming in, gold is coming out. Kenya, where I reside right now, is another place where gold is a key aspect of Ruto's re-election. So this can't happen unless we are atomized 54 small, weak, isolated nations. Yeah. So Pan-Africanism is the solution. It was the solution yesterday when Kwame Nkrumah gave us the fundamental books about neocolonialism. It was the solution. It was a solution yesterday. It's the solution today, and it's the solution tomorrow. Unless we unite, there'll be a war in Sudan today. There'll be a war in your country tomorrow. So unification is the key. Unification is the road for Africa to truly take its rightful place on top of the mantelpiece and have its rightful place in world affairs. And I'll leave it there.
We have finally come to the panel discussion part. Can I ask the speakers from today to come up?
I hope you found it informative, stimulating, and most of all, forward looking. So this is your turn now to engage with our speakers. Still got Maurice online and Ahmed online. So think about your questions and things that you'd like to ask them. And I just ask you to be respectful, because none of us are perfect as individuals. None of our struggles are perfect. We've all made errors, you know, and we need to learn from those errors. So I'm going to start while you're thinking, because I was thinking things are changing really quickly in front of our eyes, but are they really changing? So I want to ask the panel, what would you say is the current world order, and how does it impact on Africa and African people? So that's quite a wide question. We can see a number of things going on. What's happening in Gaza, we see the kidnapping of Medora, we see what's happening in Sudan, we see the continued attacks on Africa, but there seems to be some change. Is it a change in form? Is it a change in essence? What is the current world order for the young people in the audience?
Say this.
when we had our sixth conference, we faced chapter in its political report was about globalization, and that globalization is a new stage of imperialism. Now, since the re-election of Trump, we need to look at that, because the system of globalization is a system of let us say that the multinational companies are determining what's happening in the world. Trump is saying no. The American companies may determine what is going in the world. And the multinational, which they want us to trade with her or work with her, must come back to the United States. And that against the economic laws of globalization. Because the economic laws of globalization allow capital to be exported and imported by others according to economic conditions, cheap labor, raw materials, big markets, and so on. And if you don't have this in the United States, why you compel capital to return to you? By force. Force of taxation, of tariffs. And that means the globalization system is not there anymore. The free trade system is not there anymore. Not that. The reality of international capital going around is not there anymore with. Yesterday, he said something strange. This Trump. He said those countries who support Greenland, I will raise the tariffs by 10% from the 1st of January, and then it will be 15% by the 1st of February. What is this? Not bargain. This is the back, let us say, the bad side of it. The other bright side of it is that despite what is happening, and that the imperialism is having global wars, there are no new economic order. That there are countries like China, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, who are trying to make a new economic order. To what extent that will not lead to the Third World War, which I think we have in it now, but in pieces. Instead of having a global war, we have a war in Sudan, and we can go war. So by pieces. I think that it's. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. And in answering it, I think Brother Ahmed raised the name of the Sasha Coutinho and the book, Neo-Colonialism, the last stage of independence. but it's essential to understand what is taking place in relation to African people in this world. To answer the question directly, in terms of what the global order is, our mother has said globalization, what that means. I use the term background period. Background is the word that we generated in the Caribbean to refer to European slavers and colonizers. And it is their system that currently runs the world. Forgive me, I'm a Garvey guy. I tend to speak in racial terms. I'm not apologizing. All right? But we have to understand that this system comes from a people and a culture, and the interests of said people and culture. So I use the term background imperialism to refer to the extension of the interests and the power interests of Europe as a global order. So we're talking about not just Europe, but America, Australia, New Zealand, collectively considered, and their interests, the world being Israel. Let's not forget Israel. Let's not forget Israel. And their interests, the global political, economic order being run in their interests. And you're right to raise Israel. We haven't mentioned that. And just remember the fact that Israel is seeking to expand directly its influence on the African continent, seeking observer status at the AU. And this recognition of Somaliland is an act of absolute deception that we need to guard ourselves against as African people. Our mother has said much, and when he was speaking, I was just going to add the issue of China and the rise of China, what that means. They call it multipolar, yes, order, yeah. The issue that we have to understand, though, and again, coming from a Garvey perspective, is that the multipolar order is only an asset to African people to the extent that we are organized as African people based upon our own power. We should not get comfortable with Chinese power as though it's going to serve us as African people just because the Chinese are benevolent. It's not going to happen. Yes? The only way we protect our interests as African people in this world is to develop power among ourselves in our interest. That doesn't mean that we can't have good relationships with people. You understand what I'm saying? But our good relationships will only become exploitative if we don't have exclusive power. And so the effect that it's having on African people at the moment is that everybody, because of the resource-rich land that the Creator has blessed us with, is seeking to secure their economic interests among us as African peoples. And we have to be very conscious of that. Yes? That when we negotiate deals, that we don't negotiate based upon simply the fact that it's not America and Britain, and therefore they're going to give us a good slice of the pie. It's not going to happen. Yeah, so there's more that could be said on that one. Yeah, for the sake of time.
Thank you for this.
I would say, quite similar to both of you, that there is the current global order is between both the decline of the American empire, because it is declining, and the rise of China and Russia and their economies. And I think the American empire is being threatened, and I think it's no coincidence that Trump was re-elected. It's because of the threat of capital that is happening. And it is of no benefit to us if we are not united as America falls. We need to be united. We need to have our own interests in mind. And again, we live in a capitalist world. China is still capitalist, so is Russia, etc. They will prioritize their own material interests in mind when making deals, etc. And unless we fight for our own interests and we build up our own economies with our own civilians and workers in mind, then we will just another empire will just be replaced with another. And so we do have to take that in mind when we see America falling or we see BRICS as a new form of capital. We have to take that in mind. Yeah.
Anyone want to ask her?
There are people online.
Yeah, I know. I'll come back to them. Okay. Anyone want to ask? So just a minute. Let me just because I know there's not a question. You'll come back. We'll bring you in. So starting with the brother there.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Joseph Otieno. I'm from East Africa. I've been waiting patiently to hear all the speakers mention one thing, but I haven't heard. We have got a challenge in Africa. Let me put these points, the first point. We have got the African Union, which doesn't do anything for Africa. Yeah. Secondly, we are 54 countries. Now, those 54 countries, just think in terms of a Tower of Babel. If you read the Bible, you will understand what I'm trying to say. We have got so many languages, we can't communicate together, we can't think together. As much as I do not agree with Museveni's politics, but he's right by saying that the Africans were defeated by Europeans because of our weakness. Until today, Africa, I cannot trade or sell my tomatoes to Kenya or sell my tomatoes to Congo. And then we are talking about being hardened. The unity will come until we realize, I understand, Kwame Nkrumah said a long time that we must unite, but that language within African concept does not exist. Okay, second point, if we are serious about helping countries like Congo and Sudan, your son has raised, you said 45, is it 25? In Britain, we are 3 million of people of African origin. We could raise 3 million in one day. Why can't we do it?
Okay, so I'm going to start with Ahmed. Are you okay? And Maurice? Okay, well, if Maurice, when he joins us. So our brother, if I understand him correctly, has said the language of unity doesn't exist within Africans and that we were first defeated. So I'll take that from the 1400s when the Europeans entered Africa. You know, we were first defeated because of our own internal weaknesses. Do you have a view on that, my brother?
No. The most important question is that the African Union is useless.
So, but is the Union identical to the African people and to African culture?
Yes, I mean, one of the first things that the African Union did was recognize the colonial borders. So that in itself was the biggest gift to colonial powers that were looking to become neo-colonial powers. And you're right, I live in Kenya. Traveling within Africa is a nightmare. So many flights. If I want to travel to fellow African state countries, I went to Morocco, you have to leave the continent to come back in. Yeah, I want you to go see a good friend of mine in Senegal. Again, I'd have to leave the continent to come back in. So travel alone. Then we have the question of currency. My Kenyan shilling if I want to change it to a Tanzanian shilling, I have to change it to a US dollar, then from a US dollar to a Tanzanian shilling. And then if I don't spend all of my shillings in Tanzania, what do I have to do? I have to change it back to US dollar to change it back to a Kenyan shilling. So of course, division is in the fabric of the post-colonial state, but that's by design. That is by design. And it is, I know, I can understand why we can have a pessimistic look at these things, but then also look at the AES. The AES is developing a central bank, developing an AES passport, developing developing a confederation of states. They're already united on foreign policy. Yeah, Algeria has problems with Mali, now it has problems with Burkina Faso and Niger. So if these three countries can succeed, and so far they are succeeding, yeah, we only have to look at economic growth. Niger is the fastest growing economy in Africa. Burkina Faso is not too far behind. And this is during a state of war. Could you imagine what they can do in peace? Yeah. So the people of the neighboring West African countries are paying attention and saying, hold on a second. In Nigeria, we don't have war. How come we don't see tomato factories popping up? How come we don't see this much road paved and this much infrastructure projects? How come we don't see a leader and leaders who are speaking the language of the youth? So I can understand where the pessimism comes from, but there is no future in how the current status quo. In 55, if we include Western Sahara, 54 atomized countries. We're just going to move the headline from Sudan to another country in war, from Ethiopia to another country at war, from that country to another. Unless we solve it won't happen overnight. We can't turn what we are today into tomorrow, the United States of Africa. But we can start off with visa-free movement. We can start off with some sort of development of a unified currency. We can start off with military agreements. If you attack one, you attack all. Steps that we need to take, because as Kwame Nkrumah said, we unite or we perish. Yeah, we unite or perish. My father can tell you about how many people that he's lost during this war. Again, don't look at Sudan as an isolated incident. It's Sudan today, it will be your country tomorrow. It's unite or perish, and that's the message. Pessimism has its place only to understand the failings of tomorrow, not to put us off our future.
Thank you. Before I begin with ShakaRA, I find it difficult to accept that this unity is in the fabric of African culture. You know, I can see the mechanisms of disunity in terms of
You might say that. We need to allow them to speak as well. So
yeah, maybe my answer may address your concern here.
We are going to move on after that because it's not.
That's fine. But in my speech, I think that I acknowledged the feeling of helplessness that we sometimes feel, and that's where the pessimism comes from. Yeah, I also want to acknowledge that half the room probably has one eye on that. Outside at the moment, that's all good, but priorities, these things. But maybe just bring up the school data and social planning. At the same time, one of the things that a cultural and African cultural orientation does is that it helps to correct our perception of ourselves. We have to contend with the extent to which our perception of ourselves as African people has been defined by the colonizer. And the extent to which anthropology as a discipline, the study of cultures, was developed in a colonial context. And one of the ways this affects us is my elder referred to the Tower of Babel. That Africans speak all these different languages. But what if I said to you there's a scholar by the name of Baba Kwesi Pro, who is from Ghana, now lives in South Africa, Tanzania, South Africa. And he has attacked this idea of the African Tower of Babel by doing independent studies and research on African languages to discover the fact that what we call thousands of languages are actually dialects of between 8 and 12 root languages. Yes? But the European have done studies that tell us that there are thousands of languages on the African continent. And so because of that, and because we internalized that perception, we perceive division where it doesn't exist or may not exist to the extent that we think it does. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We'll come to you. We'll debate. Once again, we'll debate, right? But the point I'm making is that it's important to study these things, to do that research. Yes, to realize that actually there's probably more relationship between us than we have been taught to perceive in our everyday life. Yes, I'm an African from the Caribbean. The way how we talk in the patrol, where we go to Sierra Leone and Ghana, the people that understand me better when we talk patrol, they will talk English. Why? Because it comes from the same root. Yes? That's one thing. The second thing is that we need to study political economy. We spoke of China earlier, and one of Baba mentioned well, he didn't even tell about the multipolar order and the rise of China as an economic power. One of the reasons for this is the investment in developing currency, independent currency, and the technology of currency, which means that China is not as beholden to the dollar as many other nations are. But that didn't just happen. It took work and the technology to manifest that kind of whatever level of independence they have at this moment in time. As the director of Kimbunga Media, developed what is called the Umoja Black Economic Show. And that is to take our conversations about economics beyond financial literacy and business development and look at the global economy and why it is that all of the indicators that Brother Ahmed just delineated exist in terms of travel and currency. The same thing exists among us in the Caribbean islands. Yeah? That it's very difficult to travel from one island to the next, even though it may be only 2 hours away. You understand? And it's impossible to develop viable economies of scale with that kind of fragmentation, yes, among people. And so one of the tasks that we have to set ourselves is to study those dynamics and to find ways of mass propagandizing and education of our people about those dynamics and why they exist and methodologies for resolving them, not just in principle, but in practice. Thank you very much.
Someone on the sister there?
We live in a world where I feel like the youth are increasingly more simplistic with right big we live in a world where I feel like the youth are increasingly more disinterested in trying to make a change in their own future. And so I guess I wanted to ask, how can we increase engagement in it from the youth in trying to build a better future and working sustainably, despite the horrible things that we live in and the capture of our minds digitally and the ways that even policy is not trying to empower young people to find more autonomy and like make more of an impact in their world.
So how can we increase engagement of young
So let's start with our elder. I'm sure he'll got something.
No, I think that's a question for you, not for us. How you want to be engaged more? You do it. Excuse me, Ahmed, I will mention you for something. You know, Ahmed started his studies by football and became a coach. Went to the United States, coaching for 6 months, came working and became people. And suddenly one day he came to me, he said, I want to go back and study university again. They said, what I had to do with that? It is your life, do what you want. And he went. And went to one of the best universities, Manchester. He did very good. He got given to continue for a master. He worked here, was working very good. Decided, no, I want to go to Africa. And he went to Africa and he is us now. So you decide for yourself. That is the best thing to engage yourself with others. You establish. You have this organization, London, London for Sudan. It is fantastic. This is a discovery. And when you do such things, you continue to develop what you want. But if you ask us, think of us as the colonial states. Do you want to ask the colonial states what to do?
Just hold a minute. Can we just bring in Maurice? Maurice, he's on land. He's from Friends of the Congo.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Question was, how do we engage the youth at the Maurice?
I see. I mean, organizing both inside and outside of the Congo, we engage the youth by meeting them where they are. That is through art, through music, through sports. One of the members of the Basanjo Coalition, they're in the Isangi district of the Congo. That's in near Kisangani, Lumumba's home base, deep in the rainforest along the Congo River. And one of the key ways in which they mobilize young people is through the sports. They utilize sports to engage young people who are then brought into a space where they can be politically educated. They're not only mobilized around the sports, football in particular, but they also mobilize to defend the rainforest. It's one of the areas where young people mobilized to shut down a palm oil plantation that was being run by an American company right here just outside of Washington D.C. in Philadelphia, called the Blattner Group. So we see in a very practical way where frontline organizations are engaging young people through their interests. If you look, for example, over the last week or so, we have this 20-something-year-old, I think they call him iSpeed, something like iSpeed, iShow, a streamer who's been just traveling to different parts of the continent. And even though those of us who are politically seasoned may look at what he's doing and saying, that's a vanity project.
about what, by virtue of his just traveling in different parts of the continent and streaming it, you have young Africans all over the world who are tuning in. They're seeing parts of Africa that they didn't see, understanding things about Africa, even though it's a narrow window that they didn't understand before. So we see where young people are being engaged based on their interests and engage in a concerted fashion that can ultimately make a difference. I mean, just look at the mobilization around Palestine. It's the Gen Zs and the millennials who are utilizing the tools that they're familiar with. The social media, Instagram and TikTok. I was just so struck in one of our organizing efforts where this PhD student from a local university near us there in Washington wanted to be engaged around the climate crisis in the Congo. And her primary source of news was TikTok. So I was just really struck by that. So I think the formula is there, whether it's organizing in the rainforest, whether it's doing outreach on a continental level, or whether it's making an assessment of how young people who have organized and mobilized around Palestine, that you meet them, where they are, and without any kind of prejudging, and creating a space where the youth can be fully self-expressed. That is to say, let them use the tools at their disposal, the creativity that they bring to the table that we probably have never even thought of, to bear up on our movement, for a sovereign continent. I wanted to say something quickly, however, about that question around the African Union. I think it's a very important one. We look at, when Ndalami Zuma became the chair of the African Commission, she said something that was striking. She said she was shocked to find out that up to 90% of the funding for the African Commission came out of Europe. She was shocked to say that the Peace and Security Commission was funded almost entirely by France. So if you look at it structurally, who is financing the African Union, then you have a good sense of why we see the results that we're getting out of the African Union. And one of the staunchest supporters and biggest funders of the African Union was taken out, by NATO and AFRICOM. When Gaddafi was overthrown, there's this professor on Twitter that was in support of the empire, and she tweeted. She said, Pan-Africanism is dead, because one of the biggest backers in terms of putting their money where their mouth is was Gaddafi. So as long as we see these structural features in place where the financing of this continental body is coming from Europe, then the results are going to be what we see today. So what is the response? Our ancestor Kwame Ture, he would say it almost flippantly, organize, organize, organize. And it's through the organized masses. I think that's where we really have to take up our game in organizing on the local level on the continent. What we see, a lot of people talk about, the Alliance of Sahel states and the agreement coming out of Lupto Goma. That's a product not of military leaders taking over countries, but organizing at the base for a number of years. We have to remember that before A.R.M Traore came into power in Burkina Faso, it was the youth and the mamas in the markets that chased out Blaise Compaoré. They had their contradictions, of course. They weren't anti-imperialists, but they were able to mobilize in a way to chase out Compaoré. So we saw a lot of local organizing, grassroots organizing in the Francophone West Africa, in combating France Afrique, the CFA franc and the economic and financial stranglehold that France had over West African states. It was the people who were resisting, the intellectuals who were writing, the folks who were in the streets. So I think we have the formula in front of us, and looking at the African Union at the top is not going to deliver what we're looking for, in spite of their 2063 plan, in spite of their Africa Free Trade Area agreement, it's going to be local organizing, grassroots organizing in a very concerted fashion, with a keen understanding that it's the people who are ultimately going to make the difference. And we have to chase these agents of neocolonialism, what Frantz Fanon called the national bourgeoisie. We have to chase them out of power. So we have the answers. It's a question of whether or not the extent to which we're going to organize to bring about the change we're looking for.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think with the youth, there's a distinction between the youth in the diaspora and the youth in Africa. And I think as youth in the diaspora, I would say it's so much harder to organize when you live in such an individualist society, and you're divided from your community. So I would say there is a sort of responsibility from the elders to educate their children and also to get them to go outside, because I think going outside is so important. And I think social media, it can really only do so much, especially because we live in a surveillance state. And social media, like, whilst it's good for kind of basic media knowledge, you have to go outside, you have to meet other people, you have to read. And I think as well, outside of diaspora, but in actual African countries, I use Sudan as an example, the youth have mobilized and played a great role in the revolution in 2019. And I would say we do have to acknowledge with the war, there has been a gap in a lot of the youth's education. And to rebuild that, we have to take a greater role into rebuilding through grassroots, and to take a greater role in education, because I think education is, dare I say, one of the most important things, and community is also one of the most important things. And I think it's very different for us in the diaspora, but also we should be organizing with the liberation of Africa in mind. And so mutual aid between us and the youth in Sudan, for example, but also in other African countries, we all have to be connected. And that's, yes, through social media, but also just community. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Ahmed has his hand up. Is there something?
Yes, I'll just say something very briefly. Yeah, social media is important, and it's an important place to make the initial connection. But once you've made that initial connection, meet up. If you can't meet up, have a phone call, connect beyond, just the DMs and the comments on each other's post. Me and Maurice are a great example of that. Maurice is based in DC. I'm based in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya. On African Stream, one of our most important topics was obviously Congo, because Congo, as Kwame Nkrumah says, is the heartbeat of Africa. When it bleeds, we all bleed. So we wanted to make sure that we got our coverage correct on the Congo. Maurice will tell you the amount of times I contacted him to just have a look at a story. Brother, are we on the right track with this? Are we not on the right track with that? Yeah. And then he came to Nairobi. We went and ate in an Ethiopian restaurant here in Nairobi. So it doesn't mean that if you make the initial connection on social media, I'm sure our first connection was via social media or via someone that we know, but it didn't stop us calling each other, speaking to each other directly, and eventually meeting each other. And it'll be the first of many meetings, I'm sure. So, I know we're so kind of in our bedrooms and kind of the internet is become its own little thing. People will be on their laptops all day, all night. That's fine, but also go outside and connect with real people. Yeah, that's the only thing I'll add.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Thank you. Yes, we're very, very much pressed for time, and we're very behind as well. So I'm going to take one question. I saw one hand up already.
So I just had to be fair. And yes.
Here is one of the issues over our the problem is when I speak about neo-colonialism, so Africans were Africans, 100%, 100% successful. I even think before about what I said, how can I also go that extra day? Yes, I get it. It's fine. I'm gonna go the extra day. So, from my foot, it's a class trouble. Well, exactly. Everything's a cake. It's hot. Cake's a cake. Flour is not cake. It's on this type of everything. Specifically in the classroom, someone says kind of up to me. Someone said, "Yeah, that goes it. That goes." 20 billion people. You know what's kind of black. I mean, what point is that how get advice? How did you guys remember this is just the issue? Just for capitalist issue that we have about things. Already local.
Well, thank you very much for that question. Of course, definitely. Anyone coming? So how to communicate. So yes, if I get you correctly, you're asking what the best way is to communicate that Africa's problem is not just a new colonial issue, but it's a class issue and also a patriarchal one. That's
someone chatting with the patriarch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's not just a race thing, but there's a class.
Yeah, just
like success isn't just like the unified. It's a Dangote
The only confusion that I'm having with the question is in the premise. I don't know how you communicate the realities of neocolonialism outside of a class dynamic. Yeah, I don't know if that's even possible. If we understand what neocolonialism is, especially as Sasha Coutinho defined it, it is the essence of neocolonialism is that the state may have all the outward trappings of sovereignty, but its economic policy and therefore political policy is coming from outside. So the outward trappings of statehood is the government, and sometimes the corporate elite within the nation, yes, who are servicing the interest of the outside body. That is a class analysis. Yeah. So neocolonialism itself defines the class issue within how it identifies what the problem and the dynamics are within it. So I don't know, maybe I don't know how you're explaining what neocolonialism is, but I'm saying if we understand what it is, it's almost impossible to identify. Now, to deal with what you're saying in terms of Dangote and so on and so forth, the issue there is the mass orientation versus the individual orientation. So we look at, because we seek inclusion, acceptance, and progress rather than liberation, we look at individuals' success as avatars for Black progress in general, right? An analysis within the context of a neocolonial understanding would teach us that unless the masses of our people are progressing, then this is not real progress. It's not real development. Read the first chapter of How Europe Undeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney and how he explores what development is and what it is not. Yeah. And so the idea, again, coming from a Gaviat perspective, is to reinforce the mass orientation that it must look like the development of the living conditions of the masses of our people. And then once we understand that, we're not tricked by a Dangote. And even then, we understand, like African Stream, educated me some time ago, because I'm not a big fan of Dangote, yeah, like as we shouldn't be, right? But African Stream put out a video that looked at how Dangote's attempt to develop an oil refinery was being attacked. Yes, by Chevron and Shell and BP and all them things there, and what that means for us as African people. So even though not being a fan of Dangote, there was a deeper analysis that I had to engage, that even that symbol of capitalism in Africa was a soap way, yes, for the real capitalists in Britain, yes, and America, and what that means for us as African people. And finally, I would say that in that context, we need to look deeply into what cooperative enterprises are and how they are formed, and how we can form them in an industrialized sense to develop collective economic power of our people. Thank you.
Don't whether what I'm going to say make it more difficult or easy. But I will say it because I think it is the real approach to problems. Get from these abstract concepts to the concrete, and you will understand the link and the relation between things. He tried to say that without such language, but this is the language of the theory of knowledge, methodology, that the abstract give you concepts. And concepts is not knowledge. They are partial. Knowledge is the concrete. So you come from the concept, the material down. If you want to understand new colonialism and class and relation between them, go from the abstract to a concrete in a definite country. Then things will be very clear, because you will see the relation either of dependency or of exchange between classes and colonialism. And then you will catch them red-handed.
That's how you think I'm looking.
Yes, you will catch them red-handed. This is the relation between class and neo-colonialism.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Sorry, if I may steal a minute here.
As brief as possible.
As brief as possible. My wife was imploring me correctly to address the issue of patriarchy. Even though it wasn't the part of the brother's question, the sisters did raise it, and so it is important to raise. And I'm going to give what might be considered a controversial answer, because we are not used to considering our indigenous cultures as progressive in relation to issues of gender. And I think our sister earlier, I believe her name is Sasha, was speaking to the matrilineality that is very, very prevalent within indigenous African culture. And I think the need for us to revive that sensibility and and distinct from a Western feminist framing is extremely important. Because of the fact that within our indigenous cultures, read Ife Amaduimu, anything by her. She's an Igbo scholar, but she speaks to the fact that the role of women in our society, whereas in Western society, the role of women within a family is confined and led to a divorce from political economic power. Within the society, indigenously, the role of mother, wife, had political and economic power. And that was manifested in society in various different ways, sometimes imperfectly. Yeah. But the point is that there are lessons there and rudiments there in terms of how we develop our social relationships as men and women to ensure that as we grow and as we develop, we are ensuring that the misogynistic patriarchy is not allowed to take a stronghold to the confinement and the disempowerment of women in the society, because the woman has political and economic power based upon her role, yes, within community, within society, within nation, and within nation. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, ShakaRA. Ahmed, we're very much behind on time, and we might have to vacate the venue soon. So I'll give you about a minute. roughly, just try to be brief for us, please. Thank you very much.
Sure. So just about the question of class, Kwame Ture correctly said that the African bourgeoisie is the most vicious, self-serving bourgeoisie anywhere in the world, and he's right. And the quick example I'll give to that is the ruling class in the UK understand that they have to do a little bit of development because they will still have to use the same hospitals, the same roads. The ruling class in Nigeria knows when push comes to shove, they're going to the UK for their surgeries. They don't mind using the broken roads as long as they steal the money from the contractors. The point is, there is a contradiction there where someone like Dangote understands that actually, why are we the second biggest oil producer in Africa, but we import petroleum? That's the contradiction. And that's where there is a role in where there is a nationalistic sense, nationalistic Pan-African nationalism that can be explored by some elements of the ruling class that we can use to our advantage. Once we use it to our advantage, then we overthrow them as well. I'll just leave it there.
Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of our discussions. Thank you so much for staying in. We know it's been quite a long day, and I really appreciate from the Pan-African Society and all African People's Revolutionary Party, we really appreciate your time and staying with us as well.
Well, I want to thank you and thank all the Africans who are here, the organizers, and the systematic scene who never appear in front of the people, always behind. And then on behalf of many Sudanese who are here, we are very grateful. And that solidarity will give us a mile for going. But thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We thank everyone for coming. We hope that we are living, we know how to support materially and actually practically the plight of the Sudanese people, and of course the African Revolution. One of our ideologues, Kwame Ture, used to say that when he would quote the fascists of Europe, who says that if you tell a lie a million times, people will think that is the truth. But we revolutionaries say that if you tell the truth once, it will break a million lies. And all the lies that Dane have been saying about how the Africans born in Britain don't like the Africans born on the continent, the Africans born in the Caribbean don't like the Africans born in North Africa, the Christians Africans don't like the traditionalist Africans, the Muslim Africans don't like it. All they do is fight. We see that lie has been broken today when we all came together with all of our differences, but we know that we are one people and we are one people. So we say that we must have a call, we must put a call to action. Well, a lot of our speakers have the emphasis on why we need to join an organization. Kwame Ture was fond of saying that Africa is our mother. If your mother is being raped and we just stand by saying, oh, I have a job or I have this union, so I cannot help my mother that's been raped. Just by our acts of inactivity, we are against our mother, just for not doing anything. So we say that we must have that in mind, and we must have it in our consciousness, and our speakers have made emphasis of how the way we can actually fight and win is to organize. Malcolm X was fond of saying that we are not outnumbered, we are out-organized. Organization determines everything. We have this podium today because someone in our organization decided to go and pick it up. We are able to do this today because someone decided to put in their efforts to do it. So we need to tell our numbers in the organization. We need to be part of organization and go to meetings and put in our inputs on how to make our struggle, to make it more effective, make it more coordinated. Really, we say that if we organize, we'll be able to do more. We'll be able to do this with the two numbers that we have, but we would like to do more. We would like to have Saturday schools in our community. We would like to do more for Sudanese and other African refugees here. We'll be able to host brigades and trips to Africa for us to be able to go to the motherland. So we encourage people to look at organizations there in England that they can join and where they can work for the liberation of our people. We said that you have a look at the A.P.R.P, the African People's Revolutionary Party. If the A.P.R.P is not for you, join any other organization fighting for liberation and power for our people. Our speakers have already spoken on power. There's no need for me to, emphasize, but we know that once we have power, we'll be able to sanction the UAE. Why are we back in the UAE that stop the killing? So what was that? We have all the resources that everyone needs. If we say that we are not going to export our resources to anyone, we're not going to sell oil to anyone, they are gonna beg us. So we need power to be able to make that decision for ourselves. We said that we need to start building a revolution wherever we want to see revolution. If you're an African born in Kenya, the most effective way to help the Sudanese people, of course, help in other way you can, but also work on building a revolution in Kenya. When we have a liberated zone in Kenya, Sudanese refugees and Sudanese people that are fleeing this present world, you have a safe haven. So we say that we need to be building a revolution wherever we have. If you want a revolution in England, you shouldn't be so solidarity, charity. What are you doing to take power in England? We were African, we are Pan-Africanists. We want power in Africa. Of course, we support revolutionaries from England, but though we are here, we must be supporting programs that are leading the revolution, whether with our resources, whether by volunteering, whether by joining their chapters here. Yeah, it is their chapters here. A lot of organizations have chapters here. So we say that we need to have it in mind that the most effective way to show solidarity is to build a revolution when we want to see change. We encourage us to do our research and have a look at organizations there in England. A lot of organizations, like I said, if it's not for you, have a look at the Kimbunga and rebellious movements. If not, have a look at Pan-African People's Parliament, have a look at Nation of Islam, have a look at PAIGC, Movement of the People. If for some reason these organizations are not for you, make one. Make one if these organizations are not for you, and then fight for our people's liberation. But that's the weapon that we need to fight. We say that organization decides everything, but most importantly, coordination between these organizations. This was able to happen today because of a lot of organizations came together for their support. Yeah, we know that we have to put ego aside for us to be able to achieve the objective of Pan-Africanism. We have to put ego aside. We have to build a lot of our people are spoken about today, an actual functioning African Union. Anyone that knows the history of African Union would not give any credibility to African Union. I think we as a people, one of the action points we need to have in mind is to not give any credibility to African Union, because African Union is not Pan-Africanism. If you look at the history, we saw that when the real revolutionaries were organizing in the Morovia bloc, the enemy put up their puppets for them to form another bloc, and those blocks they took over African Union. So we say that's not African, that's not Pan-Africanism. That is a body. That's the body of people at the top. Pan-Africanism has to come from the ground with people rooted in power. So we say that we need to, all organizations have to put aside our ego and work together. And I'm just going to end there. I'm not going to take much of our time. So my announcements: we have orientation on the Saturday at first. End of this month at Brixton. So just some announcement for people that want to take action with everything we've heard today. Kwame was fond of saying that thoughts without action is blind, whereas action without thoughts is also nothing. So we need to take action with everything we've received today. So we have orientation on it at first at Bristol. Speak to one of our comrades if you say anyone with this tag, if you would like to come to our orientation and get to know about what's the program of our organization, how do we aim to achieve Pan-Africanism for our people. Starting from next month, we'll be having weekly programs on campuses, starting with Brunel universities and other campuses as well. If we have any students here that are in uni and they would like to have a Pan-African society on their campus, we're happy to support them with the ideological resources. We're happy to support them with the efforts for them to have Pan-African society on their campus. Further announcements, this venue, they've been generous. We push beyond time, but they have a show for AFCON match. If anyone wants to stay and watch that, yeah, they have I think Senegal and I don't know. Second round. So yeah. So if you want to say, please, we give thanks to the venue for everything. Yeah. Just to finish, we're going to give some credits and give thanks went due to some other organizations that have been working with us and that have made this possible. We give thanks to the Sudanese Communist Party in London for Sudan, the Umoja Project, Men of Solidarity, and Co-Rising, Friends of the Congo, Pan-African Society, PAIGC, Sovereign Media, African Stream, Guardians of Africa, Diaspora Action, Movement of the People, Kimbunga Media, North Cultural Assembly, Mmere, Medania, RCG, PACM, Pan-African Society Cooperative Forum, and all 100 plus chapters of and work studies of A-APRP everywhere in the world. We give thanks to all the individuals and organizations that made this possible. We say that forward to the Sudanese Revolution, forward to the African Revolution, forward ever. Thank you so much.
Revolutionary greetings, comrades. It's an honor to be with you today as you conscious people in London, in the heart of the mother of imperialism, Britain, the mother of the children of the imperialists, the United States Yankee imperialists, as you come together in your courage on a Sunday afternoon, on a day that you could be doing many things, showing that you have consciousness, showing that we need to have coordination like our enemy has coordination, showing that when you have a struggle going on in East Africa, Northeast Africa, in Sudan, at the same time you have other struggles going on in other parts of Africa, like West Africa, the homeland of Ahmed Kaballo, that we will have to have organization. In the homeland of Ahmed Kaballo, we have the African Party of the Independence of Guinea-Bissua, which we're proud to serve in some of its leadership structures that our people have given us confidence to serve in, such as the Political Bureau of the Central Committee, the National Secretary, and to coordinate the Ahmed Kaballo Political Ideological Training School. Coming together with other organizations like what you're doing right here, right now, concretely, with the All-African People's Revolutionary Party in Guinea-Bissau, as well as the All-African People's Revolutionary Party in England, with the All-African Revolutionary Party in the different parts of the world where we're struggling to bring coordination so that we can permanently defeat our enemy and unify Africa, liberate Africa with socialism, get rid of all these wars. So we're together with you, and we want to give you courage to make sure that we organize every single day. We study, we put it into practice. We don't just organize, we don't just mobilize to have a demonstration like today, and to tomorrow Sudan say, okay, it was a good demonstration, and the enemy keeps so organized. It has to be constant, more constant than the enemy. So we must make sure that we continue that spirit of Manchester of 1945, where we held the 5th Pan-Africanist Congress that said that our objective is one liberated, unified, socialist Africa. And the strategy to achieve our objective is the organization of the mass of our people. This is not just lip service. We have to organize like never before. Organize every segment of our people, not just the revolutionary intelligentsia, but the peasants in the inside of the country. The workers everywhere, not just the workers in the factory, the workers in the fields, the workers everywhere. And make sure that we organize and coordinate together, like the example you've given us today. You have comrades both in different parts of the world who are in the same spot in London, who are organized with different organizations, working against the enemy that's working against us everywhere. We have issues everywhere. The struggle in Venezuela. They kidnapped our president, Nicolas Maduro. Here in Guinea-Bissau, they also kidnapped our president, the president of the PAIGC, the president of the National People's Assembly, our brother and comrade, Domingos Simoes Pereira. We must demand that they release him from prison. Demand that they announce the results, because it was the almighty people, without any type of money, without any type of campaign materials, we defeat the neo-colonialists here, and they didn't want to try to postpone or even try to cancel the announcement of the election. We won't allow it. It's not a question of how many times they defeat us. The question of how many times we rise up against the defeats to defeat them. And we will defeat them permanently. So before we close, comrades, we want to go with our slogan that we always say here in Guinea-Bissau. A luta continua. A luta continua. The struggle continues. Victory is certain. Ready for the revolution. There's victory for the masses of the organized people. We will work as never before. Thank you so much for having us. We're together. Pronto para a revolução. A luta continua. Abaixo com imperialism. Down with imperialism. Abaixo com neocolonialism. Down with neocolonialism. Abaixo com capitalism. Down with capitalism. Down with Zionism. Long live the people of Palestine. Palestine will be free. Sudan will be free. Africa will be free. Guinea-Bissau will be free. Cuba will be free. Venezuela will be free. Long live the African Revolution. We're together. Thank you so much, comrades.